we're very pleased with what's happened, and when you think about where we've come in the great state of Michigan, from basically single digits where people said, you know, how's he going to do, to where we are, in all likelihood, we're going to finish in second place, over 20%. And I want to thank so many of you who have been to New Hampshire, who have been living in Michigan, going up there, the strength of our team, the intensity of the people. And you know why? Because it's a positive campaign that lays out a specific vision for America based on the accomplishments of the past. We're now moving into a position where the people of America are beginning to hear this message, and it's going to get stronger. So I think the people are beginning to reward a positive campaign, one that they say to their children, this is the way to conduct yourself in politics. I think that people are beginning to see that. And secondly, because of that, just wait 1 week from tonight, we are going to win the state of Ohio, and it will be a whole new ballgame.
All right, that was Governor Kasich in Columbus, Ohio, earlier. We also want to tell you about Marco Rubio. Senator Marco Rubio spoke in Ponte Vedra Beach, Florida, a name I still am practicing. But here's a little bit of what he had to say.
It always comes down to Florida, doesn't it? And it will again this year, not once but twice. Not once but twice we'll have to decide the presidency here, but it starts a week from tonight. Actually, it's already started because people are already voting. And in this election, it is not just a choice between candidates. We are deciding the definition of what it means to be a conservative in the 21st century. And we are deciding our identity as a nation and as a people. I have stood up to the Obama agenda, and I have offered a clear alternative. But I have learned over the last 5 years that while a member of Congress can help shape the agenda, only a president can set the agenda. And our next president must be someone that is willing to undo all of the damage Barack Obama has done and craft a new course for America's future. And that's what I will do if you give me the chance to be the next president of the United States. We have to nominate an elected conservative, but a conservative that can unite this party. I just told you a moment ago how important it is we defeat Hillary Clinton. We are not going to defeat her if we nominate someone that over 60% of our party rejects and a third of our party refuses to ever vote for. If we are not together, we cannot win. I can unite this party, but it's not just about uniting this party. We have to grow it. That means we have to take our conservatism to people that aren't voting for us now and convince them that conservatism is right for them. I know that I can do that because I've done it my whole life. But I want you to know, you believed in me once, I am asking you to believe again. We can win this election, and we will. I need your help next Tuesday because we're not just going to win the Florida primary. We are going to win Florida in November, and we are going to turn this country around, and we are going to leave for our children what Americans always leave their children, the single greatest nation in the history of all mankind. Thank you, and God bless you.
All right, David Bossie, where do those candidates, Senator Marco Rubio and Governor John Kasich, go from here?
Well, it certainly doesn't sound like they're going home. You know, I think that Marco Rubio sounds like a man who's going to stay in through Florida, at least this evening. Nothing he said is wrong. He wants to be the nominee and he wants to win Florida. I don't see how he can after this evening. And John Kasich, you know, I think he's in a little better position, quite honestly, to win Ohio. Whether he can win anything else, I don't know. But he came in a very weak second, but he didn't. But he was able to maybe edge out Ted Cruz by just a few votes. So it's a weak position for both of them to be in. And by both of them staying in, they're virtually guaranteeing Donald Trump's victory in both of those states.
You're shaking your head, Rick. What do you
well, I'm just looking at some of the numbers coming in from Michigan, and it looks like Cruz may actually end up a couple of votes ahead of Kasich. And look, I think David said it's irrelevant, right? I mean, when you look at how do I get momentum, how do I jumpstart my campaign, how do I get to competitive with Donald Trump? I mean, these guys are just stuck in the mud. I mean, they're not going anywhere tonight, and so I think that there'll probably be some good news for Cruz coming out of Idaho. after all the East Coast newspapers go to bed, he'll get a wet kiss. And that's about all he could hope for. Won't affect his campaign at all. He's organized, he's funded, he's ready to go on to the next few states. It will be interesting to see how he plays in the next big series of states, because you've got Kasich, who really, you would think would dominate Ohio, and Rubio and Trump dominating Florida. It doesn't leave very many good options like in Illinois and whatnot for Cruz to sort of take a stand on a big delegate day. So it will slow him down. And again, all good news for Donald Trump. I mean, really nothing stopping the Donald Trump freight train from getting to Cleveland with the nomination.
Momentum continues. Steve, let me ask you, on Thursday, there is going to be a Republican debate. What are you going to be looking for there? We've talked about debates in the past and how there can be moments, and sometimes people capitalize on those moments and sometimes they don't.
Any indication. I'm just waiting for the three remaining candidates to just continue to dump on Trump. I think you're going to hear a lot about Trump University. I think you're going to hear a lot about his other business ventures. I think you're going to just see them all sort of gang up on him. I mean, Kasich sort of stays out of that fray a bit, but Cruz and Rubio are relentless on that, and I think you'll continue to hear really just the focus on Trump. But what's interesting is, he is, and he pointed this out tonight, he has taken so much incoming from advertising, from the debates, from Mitt Romney, from the establishment, and the guy keeps winning. And so, it'd be interesting to see what kind of effect this has. It clearly hasn't helped Marco Rubio, but it'll, I'm anxious to see how they go after him and whether it has any effect. I do want to point out on Kasich, by the way, just to David and Rick's point. It's interesting on Kasich, because the guy, you got to give him credit for at least having a plan that has sort of worked. And the plan was come in second in New Hampshire and then sort of skip South Carolina and Super Tuesday and then make a name for himself in Michigan. The question is whether the strategy was actually, whether it's enough to actually do anything. And I think it's pretty clear that it's just not enough. But at least his strategy worked. You got to give him at least that, right? Rubio had the 3-2-1 strategy, which was come in third in Iowa, second in New Hampshire, first in South Carolina, and that strategy did not work. And we see where he is today. So
right. David, I'm just curious. So when you look to the debate that will take place. I mean, we talked about this before. Donald Trump can take the incoming and it doesn't seem to affect him. And sometimes it actually hurts whoever it was that attacked in the first place.
That's exactly right. If you just look at the last week, the establishment, we keep using that word, but the anti-Trump movement that is the Republican establishment that's gathered behind Marco Rubio has thrown everything they can at Donald Trump, including comments or statements from Mitt Romney, John McCain, and others, and it's only helped bolster Donald Trump. And I think that is, something that these candidates have to really think long and hard about. I think Ted Cruz has a little bit of an edge because he is such a good debater. He is so skilled on the stage of answering questions that he really has an edge against the other candidates, and he's able to deliver I think some of these attacks on Trump a little bit better. But I'm going to be interested to see what these candidates, we'll see who's still on the stage Thursday night, actually, if anybody gets out. But it'll be interesting to see how they try to change tacks against Donald Trump. If they continue on with trying to bludgeon him, I think he's going to get his 35-40% and win both Ohio and Florida.
Okay, stand by for us. CBS News to now project that Bernie Sanders has won in Michigan. Again, CBS News projecting that Bernie Sanders has won the Democratic primary in Michigan. Lynda, let me turn to you first. Your reaction to that?
I think this is good news for him. It's a place where, as we expected, he was going to be able to really promote his message, and in theory, it's where people should have found that it really resonated with them in their daily lives, especially as he pushed on trade, especially as he pushed on jobs and the economy. That said, as we've been talking about tonight, the math doesn't get better for him. Given how close the margin was here, they're essentially going to split the delegates. But in Mississippi, Hillary Clinton really crushed him. And so overall, she probably walks away with more delegates today than him. And since she's so far out ahead, that probably doesn't help him. And as we said, it's virtually impossible for him to catch up at this point.
Jessica, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, them's the rules. And we have to live by them. But that doesn't mean that this is anything short of awesome for Bernie Sanders.
It's a boost, a psychological boost.
And I mean, so critical that he's shown that he can win a diverse state. I mean, we were talking about this earlier in the show and talked about the difference between Southern African American voters and Northern African American voters in industrial, labor cities. And obviously, there's a difference. I mean, she's still going to win the black vote here, but the margins, it's all about tightening those margins, and he will continue to build his case that his message resonates across, across the nation completely, and that he gets that this is a diverse nation and that he has something for everybody. And I think that will be extremely meaningful for him. But again, the delegate math, it's quite amazing that, we stay up to this hour waiting on Michigan, and she walks away with more delegates, probably in the end here. So.
Yeah. Steve, your thoughts on this, Bernie Sanders' victory in Michigan? Okay, we'll wait to go back to Steve in a moment. But again, if you're just joining us, CBS News projects that Senator Bernie Sanders has won the Democratic primary in Michigan. This was a close race all night. We had been talking about the votes coming in, particularly the votes in Wayne County. That's the county that encompasses Detroit, and we were waiting to see whether or not Hillary Clinton would be able to make up some of the ground that was lost there, that she had been behind, and the question was, were there enough votes there in the remaining counties to get her beyond what Bernie Sanders had been able to accumulate there, and the answer was no. Bernie Sanders, again, the winner in the Democratic primary in Michigan. Let's talk about the lead with the delegates, though, Lynda, because I think that it's worth discussing. That system. First of all, you've explained it, but also, in convincing like the superdelegates, for instance, very early on, she was able to secure them. How did that work? I mean, what was essentially the argument in the case that was made?
Yeah, look, I think that the argument in the case is Hillary Clinton's history. So Hillary Clinton has, as you know, been First Lady of this country. She's been somebody who has been a sitting senator and has been a real champion in the Democratic Party for a great number of years. So it's not exactly surprising that members of the Democratic Party, leadership, especially within the establishment, support her, and not only support her, but do so greatly. In 2008, she also had the lead in superdelegates, but as some of us have talked about a little bit earlier, the lead this time is just so much wider than it was in 2008. When Barack Obama ended up ultimately winning the nomination, part of it was due to him being able to flip somewhere around 24 of those superdelegates to support him after initially supporting Hillary Clinton. In this case, we're talking about a minimum of 200 superdelegates who are, saying that they're going to support Hillary Clinton. And on top of that, you have those pledge delegates and a pretty wide gap there as well. So again, it's a difficult position for Bernie Sanders to be in. That said, one place that I do think that tonight's results will probably have a significant impact is in his continued ability to drive up grassroots fundraising. We've talked a lot about Bernie Sanders' incredible, by any measure, incredible fundraising juggernaut that he's been able to build. In February, he reported that he raised somewhere around $40 million in that month alone. And so, he's got incredible resources. He's been spending them to get his name ID and his message out there in places like Michigan, where he did, in fact, outspend Hillary Clinton. And I expect he's going to continue to do that in the coming weeks and months, if that is, in fact, how long he stays in it.
Rick, let me turn to you and ask, as a Republican strategist, when you look at how it was that Bernie Sanders was able to win in Michigan, what vulnerabilities do you see for Hillary Clinton? There we have a breakdown, for instance, and we've talked about young voters before and the appeal that Bernie Sanders has for young voters. But what are some of the things that you see from your perspective?
Well, I think the youth voters are a big deal. You see Hillary in all her speeches reaching out, please, almost pleading with them. I'm one of you. I can, do the same thing Bernie can do for you.
I'm for you, even if you're not for me.
Right.
Like, please be for me.
Exactly. It's pretty needy stuff, but I mean, she has to make that appeal because she's not just losing them. She's losing them by almost historic margins. And when you have this big a block of voters like this that are allied with you, it can be very powerful. You start with just an incredibly homogeneous base to then work out from. And I think what is shocking tonight, the Hillary Clinton folks are sitting around looking at the counties. Bernie Sanders won probably 60% of the counties, maybe 70% of the counties in Michigan. It was a broad-based win. It wasn't just centered in, college campuses around the state or anything like that. This was in rural districts. This was in urban districts. He competed head-to-head with her in Flint, Michigan, where she had said, I was going to be the one that brings Flint back. So he showed a real resilience in his ability to compete with her in a state that you would have thought was perfectly situated for her. But as we've talked about, this is a state that has not benefited from any economic renaissance, since Barack Obama took office. And she's out there saying, I'm the third term of Barack Obama. And I think you heard the people of Michigan saying today, maybe that's not such a hot deal.
Steve, let me get your thoughts on this news that CBS News is projecting that Senator Bernie Sanders has won the Democratic primary in Michigan.
Yeah, I mean, all the polls going into tonight showed her with double-digit leads. So I think there are a lot of people who are shocked by this outcome. I think a lot of folks moving forward are really going to look at Sanders' message here about income inequality and trade. I mean, this is an issue he was hammering her on at the debate the other night. And it's something that is not going to, could resonate and probably likely will resonate in upcoming primaries in Ohio and Pennsylvania and the Rust Belt states. And so she has some work to do. She got clobbered among white voters. Even though she had a big margin among African-American voters, the percentage of African-American voters in Michigan was a lot smaller than it was in some of the other southern states where she's won big. And I think moving forward, she has to be, again, be concerned by the message that is resonating from Bernie Sanders in some of these upcoming states.
Lynda, I'm curious, how do you think this will affect Clinton's campaign and her campaign moving forward? What are some of the takeaways here for her?
Every time there's a close competition here, or as it happened earlier on, there was a loss, you've seen her adjust and you've seen her hone her message. Today she's talking about we as a campaign. She's talking about breaking down barriers instead of, focusing on herself as a fighter. And so I suspect that, especially given this incredible margin when it comes to young voters, that she's going to end up doubling down on her appeal to them. In past weeks, we've heard her talk about student debt and also about young people coming out of college seeking support and starting up small businesses. I wouldn't be surprised to hear her expand on that message, especially next week as we're heading into some of these winner-take-all competitions.
As we've seen, though, Jessica, I mean, she's made overtures to young people before.
She has.
And, she's had a difficult time, of course, getting some of those voters who are so passionately supporting Bernie Sanders over to her side.
Absolutely. I mean, Hillary Clinton doesn't mean that much to millennial voters because they haven't watched her for 30 years. They don't remember her as First Lady. They don't remember her necessarily as New York Senator. They weren't paying attention in this way. And I'm not at all calling millennial voters, of which I am one, low information voters. But Senator Sanders' message is so perfectly sculpted for my generation who is facing student debt, who, may not even be employed, but they might not even have their first job yet, or they're in, lower wage jobs than they should be, and that their education isn't paying off for them, plus the fact that they're mired in debt. So yes, she will continue on this, but the big concern actually is that the millennial generation may not turn out to vote. And that's something, Senator Sanders' campaign is predicated on high turnout. And if it's high turnout, it is going to benefit him. And we've known that. And it's kind of a strange thing to think about that Hillary Clinton actually will be benefited by lower turnout, because we know that older people always show up. Younger people We don't know. But looking further down the map, not only do the delegates favor her, but also the schedule in terms of when schools go on spring break, because they may not be there.
Before.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's something that she needs, that both campaigns need to think about. In Iowa, Bernie had a Bernie bus that was taking kids back to campus so that they would be voting in the really liberal districts to make sure that they boosted the vote there versus going home to rural Iowa where the vote really didn't make much of a difference. So.
Right, turnout
Something
matters.
to think about.
Yeah.
It really does matter
Yeah.
on the Democrat side, and everyone's been saying our turnout is low, and I think a lot of that is due to the fact that we have two palatable candidates, generally speaking. We don't have the Trump effect, pro and against. But turnout, we need you to turn out.